Hey guys, I'm coming to you from the official Boiko Boys bench at Green Lake in Seattle, and I want to talk to you a little bit about game design. But I don't want to be so specific to the design of games, especially to the design of World of Warcraft, that we don't get a bigger picture here. There is a much bigger picture here. So we'll talk about who makes games, but when we talk about who makes games, we're really going to be talking about what kind of people are in the information systems industry in general. And so yes, they make video games, but they're also the kinds of people in general that are in the industry and the kinds of things that are wanted from them. We'll talk about, for example, how video games make money. But I want you to know that it's more than about video games. It's about how systems make money. So we've talked about how systems make money before. We're going to drill down into how video games make money. But more than anything, I want you to get a bigger picture from this. I want you to get the idea of how things, information systems in general, are designed, not just video games. However, we'll focus in on video games. And the first way I think to do that is to talk about the kinds of people. Now what you see on the screen here is a small piece of the Help Wanted screen on the Blizzard website, and I focused in on a few of the job descriptions here to kind of give you an idea of the characteristic types of people that get involved in these sorts of things. So you can see there are really some interesting job titles like 3D prop artist and effects artist and senior 3D environment artist. All sorts of very particular jobs, but I'm going to focus in on some of the main ones to talk about the kinds of people that work in these that work in information systems design in general, in this case particularly in game design, but really in general, and then what kind of things they do. All right, so let's start with the 3D character artist. This is someone typical of game design, but also not untypical of the, let's call it, the human or creative or artistic side of any information system design. They have really three big qualities to them. The first is that they're an artist, and they're very creative, and they, if this was 100 years ago, they would be doing painting, or they would be doing sculpture or something like that. They really come from an artistic background. They come from artistic bent, and so in their souls, they're artists. In this case, they also have to be anatomists because they're designing people. They have to be realistic, well, people, characters, mobs and stuff like that, but they do have to be realistic. They have to have muscles in the right place, and they have to have the right sort of proportions to be believable. So there's a little bit of science in there as well. So they can't simply be creative artists. They also have to have some feeling for the reality of what they're creating. And then finally, and this is what makes it very difficult to be this kind of person, they have to be a very expert tool user. So they have to be very techie in their own way. Not techie in the sense that they write code, not techie in the sense that they are network administrators or something like that. Techie in the sense that they know the tool set very well, and they know how to make that tool set do things that other people can't make it do. So if it was, if it was 100 years ago, there would be people who knew how to use paints in a way that other people didn't know how to use paints, how to mix them in just the right way in order to get exactly the right texture on the brush and on the canvas. Today the tools aren't paints, they're paint shops, they're photoshops, they're animation tools, they're skinning tools, they're rendering systems. And the kind of person who can run them has to have a really strong knowledge of the tools that they're working with, and so has to be really very well split between the artistic and the technical. And so that's a kind of a hard person to find. If you find yourself, or you feel yourself to be one of these kinds of people, understand that both of those things are necessary. Being very creative, being able to come up with interesting and creative designs that no one else has come up with is really important. But being able to master the technology behind making those things happen on a computer screen is also very important. All right, so that's the first kind of general type of person that we're going to talk about, is the artist type of person. Second type is the senior engineer, let's call them, the senior software engineer. In this case, they're working on the server. Now remember, we talked about programming in games happens on the client, in that fat client. It happens on the server, in the game server, and also there's the database layer. Right, so what we won't show here is the data architect. There didn't happen to be a listing for a data architect, but we've talked a lot about what it takes to be a good information architect in the past. That goes for the data architects and the data layer. So World of Warcraft might hire a front-end guy, and we'll talk a little bit about a front-end guy soon, who's working on the client, who's working on the user interface. They might hire a back-end guy who's working, or woman, who's working on the server. What does that person do? Well, they're going to maintain the server. They're going to do the programming on the server. So what do they have to be? What kind of qualifications do they need? Hardcore programmer, right? That goes without saying. Lots of experience in programming. Now, what's interesting here is if you look through the requirements, it doesn't say degree in computer science. In fact, for the artist, it doesn't say degree in art either. This is an industry, and the computer industry in general is an industry where it counts much less what degree you have and much more what you can do. And so you all are in school, you're all studying this or that, and if you wanted to be in this industry, what you'd have to know is that you'll be competing against people who maybe have less formal education than you do, but they have a lot more practical experience. So what can you do during your education to get that kind of practical experience that will allow you to go head-to-head with people who have worked in gaming companies for 10 years. You're just coming out of a university degree, they're coming out of a gaming company for 10 years. Why do you compete well with them? You compete well because you have formal knowledge, but in addition you've also managed to get some experience. So getting practical experience in the computer industry is really, really important, having stuff to show. And it doesn't necessarily mean having worked, it means being able to prove that you can do it. If you're a programmer writing that game algorithm that's really sophisticated that you can show, knows that you know how to work it. Okay, so very creative in addition to being a very hardcore programmer. So the kinds of people that are successful in this field are not your typical, narrow-minded, very focused people. They're people who cut across disciplines. The artistic people have to be technical, and the technical people have to be creative, because they're coming up with new things. It's not just, I'll tell you what this machine needs to do and you make it do it. It's, what does the machine need to do? What's the next thing? What's really cool that this machine has never been able to do before that you, the engineer, are going to make it do? So a lot of creativity there. All the jobs here have the same criteria of, jolt addict, never sleeps, will put 110% of their effort into this thing, will be completely dedicated to it to the exclusion of the rest of their lives. Unfortunately for the people who work in the computer industry, that's part of the job description of many, many jobs, especially in dynamic startup companies who are reaching for something really large. Your ability to become completely enmeshed in their world and eat, sleep, drink, and poop their ideas and their world and their procedures is what they're really looking for. So in this technical person, very creative, but also very technical, a hardcore programmer, never sleeps, and also a hardcore networker. So remember, we talked originally, what are computers? Computers are software, and computers are also networks, right? The software is software engineering, but networks have their own whole skill set and their own whole knowledge base of how to make a server work. And you know what's going on with World of Warcraft. It's massive. Just like Facebook and Google, they're very massive applications, and they require you to be able to do things with servers that maybe have never been done before to make them work harder, work faster, scale more effectively to thousands and millions of people using them simultaneously. So the kinds of people who are successful here are not only geeks for software, they're also geeks for networks. Okay, first kind of person is the artist, but they have to be very techie as well. Not techie so much as expert tool users. I think I really like to put it that way. Second is the hardcore engineer. They're obviously very, very well versed in computer science, but they're also highly creative, and they're also really, really motivated. Okay, third kind of person is the business person. So this is not just an experiment in good software design. It's not just an experiment in good cinematic software. Cinematic software meaning it's kind of like a movie. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. It's also a business, and they have to hire someone who's going to be able to take care of business and make sure that the product that they come out with is a product that people are going to want to buy, that it has a marketing plan, that it's able to be launched as a product and not simply as a good piece of software or as a good experience. So what kind of person do they need? Well, obviously industry experience. So there's no business program at all that's going to teach you how to be a really good director of business operations for a gaming company or director of business operations for any other, major internet company. It just isn't, it's not taught. It's too new. And anything that you get taught in school is of necessity not really what's going on, because guess what? They're making it up as they go along. And that's true in all of these disciplines. That's why experience is so important, because they're making it up as they go along. And so you got to be on the spot as they're making it up. You got to see the successes and failures. And then, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you'll retire from there and you'll go teach it. but you'll teach the stuff that is current at the time you left the industry, not the stuff that's going on now. Very important, by the way, for you, if you're interested in these kind of industries, to get in touch and get in contact with the people who are actually working there so that they can augment your education and give you stuff that, that professors never will know because they're not working in the field. Okay, so the Director of Business Operations, obviously industry experience, and that goes for all of these guys. They have to have intense industry experience. They have to have been through this process lots of times, as many times as it's happened, which isn't that many times. And this is really important as well. You got to be able to work with all types. We have sound people on this team. We have video people. We have writers. We have artists. We have programmers. We have network administrators. We have testers. We have all these different kinds of jobs with all these different kinds of people that are from different worlds. And this business person has to liaison between all of them and has to make them all come together. Okay, so let me, while I'm on the subject, mention a couple of jobs briefly that aren't on this list, so they don't have illustrations behind them, but are important as well. One is a project manager, someone who holds the whole project together, who gets everybody together at a table and makes them talk about stuff, who holds the schedule for the project, who tells the people what their deliverables are and when those deliverables are due, who holds the schedule for the project, how long is it going to take to do all these things, and when will they be done. This is the job of the project manager. The project manager is in charge of the scope of the project. What are we supposed to do? The schedule of the project. When is it supposed to be done? And also the budget of the project. Are we spending too much money on this project? Is it going over budget or not? So that's a project manager job. Then there's a tester job. The tester job is someone who makes sure that everything is okay. They run through all the different, if it's a video software game, a video game, they run through all the different quests, make sure that they can't make the system crash. Testers are a really, really good entry-level position. They give you a way of, specifically just being out of college, they give you a way of being able to see the entire operation, being able to see exactly how all the different code and graphics and story and all that is put together without actually being responsible for it. And your only job is to break it and make sure that what goes out the door is error-free. Or that when an error is found, a bug is found, that you help figure out where that bug came from, how to reproduce that bug, and certify that bug has been squashed. That bug is no longer in the product. So two extra really important jobs, the project manager and the tester, which I didn't put illustrations for in here. Okay, so we talked about the artist, we talked about the programmer or the back-end programmer, the server programmer, we talked about the business manager. I went off on a slight tangent and talked about project managers and testers, and now let's talk about the front-end programmer, the user interface programmer. What does this person do? Well, in this case, instead of telling you what their skills are, I listed their responsibilities. And I did that because I wanted to change gears a little bit and talk about not only who gets to be these people, but what they do. And specifically in the case of the user interface engineer, the user interface programmer, basically, to talk about the things that they are responsible for. So they break down really into three parts. User interface widgets. A widget is some kind of gadget, right? We saw in our view of the World of Warcraft user interface, this little gauge had a picture, had a little meter on it with life. That's a widget. It's something that allows you to interact with the user interface. So widget is a general term we use to describe any piece of user interface that is kind of mechanical and you move it or tweak it in some way. That's a widget. They make staff tools. Very, very important thing. Because in addition to making user interface that the end user is going to interact with in order to make the application work, there's tremendous amounts of effort that goes on in the background, especially in a video game, for production of the animation, production of the scenery, all that kind of stuff. And that needs application development as well. That needs a programmer to help figure out how to make it more effective, more efficient. You will see in a video later, someone moves this thing over the scenery and it all of a sudden changes texture. Well, how did that happen? That's a tool that some programmer created in order to give them the ability to do that. So in addition to creating front-end or user interface widgets that the end user interacts with, they're also creating tools that the staff interact with. And this goes for any kind of information system that the staff as well as the end user needs a lot of software to help them do what they do. Okay, so the final thing they do is they link the user interface together with the algorithm. Someone's putting together that algorithm on how do you decide how much health a particular character has, or how do you decide which actions are available to them on the action bar at any moment in time. And the user interface designer is figuring out when they do this in the user interface, they click this portion of this graphic, then I send this off to the server. Okay, so those are the kinds of people that are involved in a project. Certainly not all the kinds of people. I encourage you, I put a URL on the very first slide that has this Warcraft thing. I mean, that has the hiring site of Blizzard. I encourage you to go up there and look around, and just, there's like, on that page there's got to be 50 different jobs that Blizzard is hiring for, and they're all very interesting, and they all give you a different kind of insight into the kinds of things that are going on and the kinds of people that you might want to be. And so I would encourage you, if you have any interest in this, in not even in game design, but in any aspect of information system design, start looking at job descriptions and start saying to yourself, does that sound like me? Maybe not now, but does it sound like me in 5 years? Does it sound like me in 10 years? Is this the kind of thing I want to do? If so, how would I get those skills, and how would I get myself to the point where that job description was written for me? So if you work backwards from a job requisition, from a job description on Monster, or find those jobs, back to yourself, you can make yourself into the kind of person that is suitable for whatever job you want. And the real question is, what job do you want? So once you understand what job you want, you can start making yourself into that kind of person, step by step by step by step by step. Okay, let's go on to to talk a little bit about the process of game design. And what's really most interesting to me about the process of game design, and in fact getting to be more and more the process of any kind of large information system design, is that it's sort of a combination of two different worlds. Once upon a time there was movies, and over the last 100 years we've sort of figured out how to do movies. We've got standard job descriptions, things like the key grip and the best boy, right? All those weird job descriptions that came out of a long time of trying movies and what people came to be called. Lots and lots of staff members, lots and lots of processes that you go through. Movies are a well-known phenomenon. There are people, 3-4 generations of people now who have been doing movies over and over again. Very well-known discipline. Then we have the discipline of software engineering. Software engineering being, and you can tell by the title, that's kind of an offshoot of engineering. And originally that's exactly how software was created, by a bunch of engineers. In fact, I'll tell you, when I first studied software, it was before you would become a programmer. You were more an engineer, and you needed to program some of your devices. You needed to program some of the things that you worked with. You were an engineer first, and you had to learn how to create software the same way that you had to learn how to do mathematics, because it was part of your job. Only thereafter did the job of software engineer or programmer split off and become a separate entity. At first it was really engineers that were doing all the software development. And so software development itself split off from engineering. So the very first software development processes were a lot like engineering processes. And I won't go into detail about what those engineering processes are, but what I want to say is that it was certainly very different than making movies. You can imagine a bunch of engineers, in a back room designing some, airplane wing or something like that, versus a bunch of people in a movie studio designing movies. Now comes the modern era, and it's really not about game design so much as it is about the web and sophisticated user interface and very graphical ways of going about things. And as I've mentioned before, the changeover from the expert perspective, which says, hey, I write software, you figure out how to use it, I could care less, to the age where if it's not immediately apparent how you use this software, then it's the problem of the software makers, right? We've had a complete mind shift. Well, for a long time, the engineers really didn't make that mind shift. So what happens when we got to this kind of new multimedia age of computers was a clash of cultures. And to the point where today, it's already been 20 years basically since an engineer found himself, and 20 years ago it was basically hymns, sitting across the table from a video producer, or from a writer, or an artist, or a sound designer, or an actor. Right? So now there's these tables that are full of all these people. So in effect, the process of game design is a mashup. It's a combination of those two really very different worlds to bring together both something that's like a movie, the setting and the characters and the mood and the music and the actors and the voices that are behind something like World of Warcraft, and the software and the programming that has to go into making that happen. And as I said before, the people who do these things are capable of doing them, are good at doing them, because they can cross over those disciplines. The engineers can be creative. The creative people can use technical tools that are crashing all the time and breaking, and require you to kind of fix them every time you use them. That's the state of that art. So we have the movie kind of thing, and I saw a quote here that an MMORPG could have 500 hours of content. Imagine a movie that's 500 hours long, right? That's the amount of content that they're creating. Now, it's not all at the quality of a movie, but you get the idea, right? So they have to be concerned with the story and the character and the scenery and the props, and with actors, having actual actors come in and do voiceovers, for example, for different characters, either making noises or saying things to the players, etc. And then we have the software developers who are very concerned with this thing happening on the client, this thing happening on the server, the tools that we're going to create in order to facilitate our artists to make really good textures, to change the way that sky looks, or to change the way that water looks, or something like that. And so that's the process. It's a combination of making a really good movie and making really good software. And as I've said before, there's a huge crossover there, and to be successful, it can't look like a movie that then people put into a computer program. It has to be seamless between those things. And we're just barely figuring out how to do that. We're just barely figuring out how to combine really high-end software with the best animation techniques and the best movie techniques. I want to zoom in a little bit on one aspect of game design, and that's the design of a zone. So it's more along this movie line, and I want to show you a little video that I found about that process specifically for World of Warcraft.
So what I'd like to show today is a quick video of how we make a zone from start to finish. Our team is made up of 4 artists. We work very closely with the 10 exterior level designers and 1 intern. Altogether, there's about 15 of us that make all of the zones. Now, the best part of starting a zone is just figuring out what we want to do. This is sort of a blue sky meeting where we just hash out what we want to do, where just about anything goes, and we talk about anything we want to do, try to get everyone excited, and just throw stuff against the wall, see what sticks, and get going on a zone. It's a very passionate time. It's also the most fun. We'll just try to go around, show people ideas, and just get everybody on board and everybody in agreement. That's right, Ed. Of course, not everybody agrees all the time. So once we decide what we want to do, we start to do Illustrator maps. We'll start to do basic layouts in our editor, just so we could get a feel for the scale, if it looks right from a gamer's perspective, and just try to get an idea for the kind of spaces we're going to have to deal with. We'll start to gather resource material and other art. But the next biggest thing that happens is going to be our concepts. That's going to give us a roadmap for the zone. It's going to give us our colors, our textures, what our trees, rocks, and things are going to look like. So once we have a good idea from our concepts, we can start building all of these little items, trees and rocks and what have you, and our exterior level designers will start building the zone. It's important to remember that every zone we've ever done in WoW has been done by hand. Everything's been placed by hand, every tile set is painted. And almost all of the items in the zone were created for that zone, all based on the color concept. And there's the final version, in-game.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit and start talking about game design. And we're going to use the comments of Kareem Sanjabi, who's a CEO of a game development company, in order to introduce these ideas. He'll talk about the aspects of game design in general and game design specifically in the World of Warcraft context. And then a little bit later, he'll talk about the economics of games.
All right. My name is Karim Sanjabi. I'm the CEO of a company called Robot Stampede. We're a social and mobile game developer. I ran an internet marketing agency before, and we had a lot of video game clients. We were Electronic Arts online ad agency for years. We did work for Sega, Nintendo, Microsoft, Xbox, Zone.com, Sony, lots of video game clients. And now we got out of doing that and have teamed up with some folks from Activision, some folks from Zynga, and have started a very small game studio trying to build games that we love to play ourselves. We're all gamers ourselves and got into computer science in school, in college, because we liked games, and we're finally taking a couple shots at making our own games. We have a iPhone game out called Danger Dodgeball, which hit the #1 iPhone game last year. We have some interactive books on iPhone, some other entertainment, and we're currently working on a Facebook social game, a multiplayer Facebook game. It's kind of hard. It's definitely more art than science. Our approach is to make games that we think are really fun to play, that we would play ourselves. And
what makes it fun?
Depends on who's building it, right? What game for me might be a very different game for you that makes it fun to play. Our team really enjoys multiplayer games, cooperative play, competitive play in a real-time environment. That's very exciting to us. It's very interesting kind of gameplay to have the human element involved in it in a big way. So all game design is really copying and borrowing from existing games. There isn't any popular game that's out there. Even World of Warcraft was a copy of other games before it. And there's well documented histories of every game. You can see where it borrows from. There's definitely a few very original games that keep coming out, but often it's mostly mashups or copies of things. So we'll start with a genre of game that we like, and then we'll talk about features of existing games that we appreciate, and features that we don't like, and oftentimes we'll try to simplify to the audience that we're going after. So the Facebook game that we're building right now, the social game that we're building right now, is going to have a mixture of hardcore gaming elements with a social gaming element. It's going to feel very different than Farmville. It's going to feel more like a PC game or a console game, and we think there's not a lot of folks that are taking that approach. So we think it hopefully will work. There's definitely a sense of the idea of level progression I start at level 1 and I can get up to, I don't even know what they're at now, level 80 or something like that. So I have a very long goal to get towards. It's a multiplayer game, so I'm playing with my friends. There's big incentives for me to invite a friend to play with me. We both get double points, basically. And you want to schedule times where you and your friends can play together, and 5 or 6 of your friends could all play at the same time. So it is very exciting from the, your group of friends are all playing together. But when your friends aren't there, and Warcraft has turned into really a very large single-player game. I think that statistically most people that play it are really playing it single-player. There's always something to do. There's always the next shiny object. There's always the next quest. There's always the next sign that says, "Oh, come look over here, and you'll get a nice carrot." And that's very addictive to people. Once you have put hours and hours, folks have put hundreds or thousands of hours into this game over the years. Once you build up a character and you have friends and you have this virtual status there, it's very hard to get rid of that. Because you're leaving your friends, you're leaving this work that you have built, even though you don't own it, you're just renting it, at least in Warcraft's model. But it's very painful to give up. So if you do cancel your account, they'll immediately come back after you and say, "Oh, we've seen you haven't played in a month. Come back and try it for 7 days for free on us, just to see your old friends again and to experience all these new things that we've added." They have a very good update cycle, so they're constantly putting new content out there, new experiences. They're tweaking it. You know, the gameplay itself is pretty balanced and pretty streamlined. Somebody can jump into it, have never seen the game before, and they'll immediately know how to play, and they'll be, you know, led along a path as they learn how to play the game. There's probably four major parts of game design. There's the kind of the story, there's the creative aesthetic, there would be the mechanics, the game mechanics of how the game is played, the rules of the game, and then there would be the technology that the game is put in. So story is a very important part. Some games will go much more storytelling, and other games, you know, like a fighting game might have very little story, but really focus on the creative, the aesthetics, the graphic, the technology. Warcraft balances that out, so they do have quite a bit of that. I don't know exactly what the percentage of players that are there for the story. There's a big backstory, there's lots of characters, it evolves. I think there are definitely a large percentage of players that like the story. I think there's probably a bigger percentage of players that don't even pay attention to the story at all, and they're just interested in building their own avatar up, or building their own virtual identity up with their friends, and getting to the next level is really probably what they're after. So there's different the different kinds of games, whether it's a console game or a PC game, a Facebook or social game, or a mobile game, all have slightly different models. So maybe I can just quickly go through each one of those. The traditional model has been, you go to the store, you buy a $40 or $50 box, you bring it home and put the CD or DVD into your Xbox or your computer and play the game. That has evolved in, like, World of Warcraft definitely was one of the leaders, getting, I think, 11 million plus users to not only pay the $40 up front, but to pay an extra $12 to $15 a month for a subscription, which, when you do the math, it turns into a lot more lucrative business. So their model turns into a retention model of keeping the customers happy in their multiplayer game. Mobile changes things quite a bit. It's actually mobile right now, with the success of the iPhone and Android phones, is taking quite a big chunk out of the handheld space, so it's just such like the Sony PSP or the Nintendo handheld machines, because a lot of gamers are going to are using their phones or their iPod touches or their iPads for gaming. The gaming model is quite a bit different there, and it's evolving really quickly right now. Currently, the model is one of two. It's either kind of the Angry Birds model, where you put a 99-cent game out there and you hope to sell millions of units of that. Apple will take 30%, so if you charge $1 for a game, you're left with 70 cents on top of that. The other model is really a freemium model, which is going across both or mobile, social, as well as some of the online or PC games are going freemium. The idea is I give away a game for free, and then I can charge some virtual currency of $1 or $2 for extra items, extra characters, extra weapons, unlocks, extra levels, that type of thing. So the idea is it's very hard to get discovered in the mobile marketplaces. So if you put a free game out there, many more people are going to download that game. If it's free, if you put it for $1 or $2, that's going to immediately probably, you know, it depends on the game, but it could probably be 100 times less the number of users would purchase it, versus getting a wide base and then trying to then upsell that base. Some people will also have ad revenue in there, where you can have a free game that is ad supported in mobile, and the game developer will get a small, they get about $1 or $2 per 1,000 ads that are served in there, which is not very much money at all. The ads are annoying, they're slow to load usually, and there's often an option to remove the ads by, say, paying $1 for the experience or the game. On social right now, Facebook is definitely the only game in town. Google Plus is new. There's rumors about it, becoming a gaming platform. I'm sure that will happen. But right now, Zynga is the champion there. Zynga and Facebook are very heavily tied together in terms of their success. Farmville, Mafia Wars, Zynga Poker, Words with Friends is now part of Zynga. Many games of some of the bulk of game players are playing Zynga games, and Farmville being currently and for the last few years the reigning champ. Zynga's model is very different than the other models, where the game is free to play, but it's very time limited. For those that have played Farmville, if you haven't, you've got to go and just try Farmville. It is a time metered game. So basically, you can play, you can put a certain amount of items down, you can grow your farm, but if I plant a seed, it might take an hour for that seed to mature. The whole game design is to really make people impatient and frustrated so that they spend real money to buy virtual unlocks. So if I don't want to wait that hour because I'm too frustrated, I could pay 30 credits or 50 credits or something, which might be $1, might be $2, and boom, my seed is now fully mature and I can harvest it. There's a whole series of actions that a Zynga game will take you through to get you to follow a purchase cycle very closely. It will frustrate you, it will reward you, it will encourage you to send gifts to your friends, which is really just viral marketing. It will encourage you to ask your friends for gifts, which is an advanced form of viral marketing. So it's really understanding kind of the psychology of gifting, the psychology of what the user gets frustrated by, and then how to monetize that at the right pain points, really. Sounds kind of brutal, but that's how these games make money. And they don't just make money, they print money. They make a tremendous amount of cash per day. As long as you're having fun playing, just keep playing. If you find that you're not having fun playing the game, quit. Go do something that's fun. That's about it. Everybody, I love chess. A lot of people don't like chess. A lot of people like Warcraft. I don't play Warcraft. So everybody, there's games for everybody out there. There's casual games. There's games for kids, adults, men, women. Everything imaginable is out there. There's probably something that will hit your style and hit your game bone, your funny bone, whatever it is. But a lot of people, you hear a lot about game addiction and things like that, especially in the Warcraft side of things. I think a lot of people play the games for different reasons besides having fun, and it turns into a little bit of a problem. So find a game that you have fun playing and play it, and if you don't have fun, quit.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kareem. That was great.